Hey, Don.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let the record show that we do have a quorum tonight, and I'm going to open this meeting up of the regular Board of Education meeting on January 9th, 2018. Would you please rise for our Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Bolton, would you read our opening statement, please?
Yes. Good evening. As the Secretary of the Bloomfield Board of Education, I wish to extend a warm welcome to everyone present and to our television viewers. The board, superintendent, and I are pleased that you have joined us as we celebrate achievement, review information, make policy decisions related to the effective operation of Bloomfield Public Schools. This is a regular meeting, and all items that will be discussed or voted on this evening have been posted as required by state law. As the Bloomfield Board of Education, we are here to set goals, listen to reports of the superintendent, approve budgets, contracts, and personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. We are not here to make management decisions or solve the problems of individuals. Management is the responsibility of the superintendent. Meetings of the Board of Ed are open to the public. It is the time when the board conducts its business governing the school system as in a public arena. The regular meetings are not meetings with the public. Therefore, comments from the audience will be confined to the time designated for the public to address the board. Decorum and courtesy are important elements in an effective public meeting. Please silence your cell phones or communication devices and refrain from talking while others are speaking. Since it is legally mandated that proceedings be accurately recorded, the board chair may have to ask for order periodically should noise begin to interfere with the recording capabilities. Excuse me. I am pleased that you have taken the time this evening to join us, and we are very proud of the school system, and thank you for your interest in Bloomfield Public Schools.
Thank you, Mrs. Bolton.
Yes.
Our consent agenda, item number 4 on our agenda, Mr. Walters.
Yes, I move that the Bloomfield Board of Education approve the minutes from the December 12th, 2017 regular board meeting as presented.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Are there any edits or corrections?
No.
Hearing none, seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? I think everybody was here. It is so ordered. Presentations, Dr. Thompson?
Thank you. Down here, I'm going to go to the podium if you don't mind.
Oh, that's beautiful. Ooh, that's good.
Good evening, members of the board, colleagues, parents, and our television viewing audience. I'm very excited to begin this evening's meeting recognizing Bloomfield Public Schools Teacher of the Year. I was fortunate to have been invited to share in the State of Connecticut Teachers of the Year celebration on Wednesday, November 15, 2017. This inspirational ceremony provided educators an evening of recognition and celebration for the impact they have on the lives of young people. One of the educators acknowledged at the celebration was Laurel Elementary School, Shannon Bazell, our 2017-2018 Teacher of the Year. Shannon's enthusiasm and devotion in education makes her an excellent representative for our district. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our Teacher of the Year for what she has given to the children and family of Bloomfield community. Shannon, would you please come forward? You can just go right this way. You can just go right this way. That's a board member.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
We have two students tonight from the high school who will present our student representative report. Ms. Alexandria Mills and Ms. Angelia Davis. You have the floor, ladies.
My name is Alexandria Mills. I am a senior at Bloomfield High School.
My name is Angelia Davis, and I am a senior at Bloomfield High School as well. Okay, so here is our Bloomfield High School's football team, and a player that now plays for the Jets, Julian Stanford. He donated 150 turkeys to homeless people. So here's Mark Coley. He just signed to University of Rhode Island to play for the baseball team there, D1. So that's really good. Yeah.
We had our holiday concert at First Congregational Church. It was really fun. A lot of people came out in support of us, and all the proceeds go towards our trip in April to Philadelphia.
So this is the conference that me and Alex attended, as well as two other students from GEMS. And we basically went to a conference that had other students around the district who are Board of Education representatives. And we basically talked about, how to better our school community, how can we reach out, how do we reach out so that we can see different people's point of views. And it was a really good experience.
And how to involve students within your community, and how they can talk to us and we can talk to them about our ideas. And also Dr. James Thompson Jr. was awarded Connecticut Superintendent of the Year.
So for our quarter one honor roll, we did something a little different. We honored people who scored the benchmark for PSAT and SAT scores, and so they got a celebration for that, whether it was for reading or for math. And there was over 300 students who got awards, so that was really good.
That's great.
Okay. So this is Jamie Lincoln Smith. They want to say it wrong. And he came to talk to us about his acting path that he went in, and me and Alex, we want to go in that route. So it was really good and inspirational. He's been in Elementary, Grand Theft Auto, Blue Bloods, Law and Order, and other cool stuff. And he basically had us we did different acting workshops, and he kind of told us what to do, how to say things, and it was really fun. So yeah.
So our forensics class, that's what I'm in. They had a STEM bus come to Bloomfield and be in our parking lot, and you go in the STEM bus, and then the woman, she talks, and we did testing on blood and how you identify the time of death, the cause of death, and the place of death, because sometimes your body is not always dead at the place that you're left.
Yeah.
And then also we tested drugs and how you know if it's in their system. So that was really fun and very interesting for them.
Yeah, we went into a room, because I'm in the class as well. So we went into a room at first, and it was like a crime scene, which I don't like that stuff. But so we went into a room, and then basically we gathered evidence there, and then we went into the car and we did some activities. Mm-hmm. So winter sports have begun at BHS. So I cheer, and I am a thrower on the track and field team. So boys basketball and girls basketball have just started their seasons. They're doing well. And indoor track, we've had a couple of meets, and yeah, we've just been doing well there.
And Monday we had a game against Hartford Pub, and both girls and boys won.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be a fundraiser for the junior class of 2019 at Ron Roll. Everybody is welcome, so if you're free on Sunday, 4 to 7:30, and it's $20 to skate, and skates are included. So if you want to come, you're welcome. Because I will be there too.
So this is basically, sorry, this is basically what's coming up. So we have a girls basketball game versus Hall, or my eyes, and then a boys basketball game versus East Hartford. So that's there for basketball. We have an indoor track meet at East Coast. Well, we call it East Coast, and that's in Rhode Island. The junior class fundraiser, like we talked about before. Indoor track has a freshman/sophomore invite.
There will be a boys basketball game on January 19th and another game on January 18th. Wait. Oh, because the font on the 16th, and our VHS winter concert is on the 18th.
Yes,
so you all are welcome to come because you're both singing and I'm dancing also. And midterms, they got pushed back because of the snow, so it's 23rd to 26th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. Any questions for our students?
How's the student council doing?
Student council is doing good. We just started getting it back up because Mr. Siegel, he was our class advisor or our advisor for the group, but then he left. So now Miss Henchy is taking it over. So she's kind of get us back in because it kind of faded a little bit. So now we're getting back into it, and she's recruiting people and adding people from last year. So yeah.
And then also, because you have your class advisor, you meet with your class advisor, which is Amanda Powell. You guys know her, say hi. And so they're talking about different things for our senior class, fundraisers we can do to raise money so we can pay for our senior stuff.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Other questions?
Yeah, if you could talk just a little bit about the gentleman that came, you said he was an actor and he was
Jamie.
on Law and Order. Talk a little bit more about that and the experiences you all had or the students were exposed to.
Well, so we all the cast from Annie, we all went to the workshop, and so we acted out a scene, and he gave us pointers about
To the microphone.
louder. Put some bass in my voice. And he talked about how when you're in a scene, don't just stand there waiting for your line. You need to act out the part even though you don't have any lines. Because there are some orphans, because I'm an orphan, my name is Duffy. There are some orphans that don't have lines. So don't just stand there and you need to act out the part. Because, for example, we're doing the part where Annie was trying to escape, and Miss Hannigan, which is Angelia Davis, Miss Hannigan, she comes in and try to catch her. So we're over here oh no, Annie's gonna get captured, yada, 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 and we're trying to help her escape. So he gave us pointers on just not standing there and how you need to interact with your partner. So he had us they had 4 students stand across from each other, and he said feel their aura, cause that's your part. So he was very interesting.
Yeah. Nice.
Just a segue, did he talk about his journey? How,
Because he said he didn't start acting until after he got in college, because he said he changed his major multiple times. So he said what he did not think he was going to be in acting until after he met his girlfriend at the time, and she was she had acting class. So he was like, hey, let me go. And he realized that was his passion. So he ended up going into the acting field. And the same day, he had an audition later on. So he couldn't stay the whole day.
Yeah.
And then he just explained, keep your hope up and keep your faith strong, because at the end of the day, you're going to get no's. No is going to come out of the, people's mouth. So you need to stay strong and know that you have talent, because that part was not for you. That's obvious for somebody else.
Amen.
Yeah, she did. Other questions? I just want to double check, because I'm a grandfather of a freshman at the high school, and I need to know this. Has your dates for the midterms changed because of the 2 days? 23rd. So it is the 23rd. Okay. So that's a solid, I can count on that. Okay. Unless we
Barring any
lose,
more snow there.
weather permitting. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, ladies. Yeah. And I assume you have homework, so you can leave if you like, or you welcome.
Alexandria.
Okay. Public PTO comment? We have none. Superintendent's report.
Thank you.
Dr. Thompson.
Okay, I would like to share with the Board of Education and also members of our Bloomfield community that we are expanding the Extended Learning Day initiative to grade 5 students effective February 2018. The Extended Day motto will be modeled after the program currently running for grades 2 through 4 with an additional 45 minutes of learning opportunities. In partnership with the Boys and Girls Club of Hartford, the Extended Learning Day for grade 5 will focus on STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. We're very excited that we're able to expand sooner than we initially anticipated. So this is something we're very happy about.
Questions? Okay, thank you. Mr. Guzman, financial report.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. The report that you received, the one-page summary report and the six-page detailed report, is as of January 3rd, 2018. As you will note on the one-page summary report, approximately 4.48% of the budget has yet to be expended or encumbered. As of January 3rd, we have expended $18.7 million and encumbered $20.7 million, leaving a balance of 1.84 or 4.4%. Please note that as of this date, we have made adjustments to various accounts, specifically the salary accounts for non-certified staff. We are still showing a deficit for the non-certified tutorial account on page 1 of the 6-page detailed report. We will make adjustments appropriately to this account going forward and report to the full board or to the Finance Committee at the January 23rd meeting. Also, please note that on page 4 of the detailed report, line 08 tuition shows a balance of $193,000. Relative to this tuition account, please note that currently there are 248 students for which we pay magnet school tuition at an approximate cost of $4,400 per student. Of these 248 students, there are 74 students who receive special education services for which we are also responsible. These services have an additional cost of approximately $8,000 per student. In addition, there are 28 students currently receiving services for special education outside of the school district in outplaced facilities. These tuition accounts are highly volatile, as you are aware, and these are the accounts that we closely monitor throughout the year. I can tell you that last year at this time, the tuition accounts were not in the favorable amounts that we have showing today. So Again, even though we're more favorable than we were last year, we're monitoring these accounts very closely, because as you know, someone can move into the district tomorrow that's going to require some special education services that are beyond our control. So this is the report as of January 3rd. Entertain any questions, should you have any?
Any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, go
The
ahead.
28
Mrs.
students that are
Davis?
currently receiving services outside of the district, what exactly does that mean?
Those are students whose special education needs are so severe that we don't have the facility or the capability within the district to service those needs. So they are outplaced in another facility, Institute of Living, Oak Hill, River Street, to mention a couple. So we have 28 students that are receiving special education services. Those numbers change and they're very fluid, but as of today, it's 28 students.
Anything else, Ms. Davis? You okay? Okay. Other questions?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Yeah, Mr. Walters.
Ms. Guzman, you said, 4,400 per student. So with these 28 special education students, what's the number surrounding them, or do they vary?
That varies.
For those 28 students in outside place facilities, the average cost is approximately $75,000. And that's an average cost. So there are some that are less than $75,000, and there are some that are much greater than $75,000.
Okay.
Now, just so you know, we are eligible for a grant through the state that partially funds some of those expenditures.
Only partially. Because the state has never adequately funded, because the federal government has never adequately funded, which is what we go down to fight for every year. Other questions? Okay. Okay, I thank you. Mr. Guzman.
Yeah, okay.
We have nothing under old business, so new business, cycle 1, cycle 2, benchmark assessments. Dr. Silver.
Thank you and good evening.
Good evening.
Board members, Superintendent Thompson. I am very pleased to be here with you tonight and to have our lineup, it's our first string of players here, our team in the front row. It's a beautiful sight to see this complete team here. So tonight we're going to talk about benchmark assessments, and our principals are here to work with us through this. Our purpose is to explain and review our benchmark assessment logic, highlighting strengths and strategies by each school. Our process, this talented group of folks here will come up and share the work that they're doing with our children in their schools, describing strengths and focus areas as well as strategies. And our payoff really is so that our community, our members of our Board of Education, our community can learn about how our teachers are targeting instruction, helping students prepare to meet the end of year expectations while demonstrating skill on spring assessments, including the Smarter Balanced and the SAT for those participating grades. So we do have a benchmark assessment program here, and what our benchmarks allow us to do is to take a standard measure that evaluates current progress and predicts performance, future performance. So some of the benefits include informing students of their skill level to let them know whether or not they're on track to meet end-of-year expectations. It informs our instruction so our teachers can respond to the progress that the learners are making. And it demonstrates our learner skills relative to, again, the end-of-year grade level expectations that students will meet or exceed those standards. So we do set our bar very high, and we measure students throughout the year relative to the end-of-year expectations. And we understand that students haven't received all of the instruction for that grade level, and during the course of the year, they will receive that instruction, and they demonstrate increased performance on our benchmark assessments. So with that said, I'm going to invite our first principal up, and I'm going to ask our board members to hold their questions until after all of our principals have shared their learning, and you have a copy of the presentation in your packets. So I'd like to invite Lisa Eels, our principal for Winton-Berry Early Childhood Magnet. Lisa.
Good evening. I am just getting over bronchitis, so I think I'm going to make it for my 2-minute section without coughing, but bear with me if I do have to take a moment. So the strengths where we're seeing the children be very competent at this time of the year in kindergarten literacy are in the area of demonstrating understanding of the organization and basic features of print. So they're learning about books and how they work. Reading emergent reader text with purpose and understanding, so that's across the continuum to where they do have to read familiar text with skill by the end of the year. So with the guidance of their teachers, they're progressing along the continuum. And in numeracy, they know their number names and the count sequence. These are the standard numbers for the Common Core standard right next to them. And they can count to tell the number of objects in a set, and they can compare numbers across sets. So our focus area is the next slide. And for literacy, we're moving next into demonstrating the understanding of spoken words, syllables, and sounds, so phonemes. So that includes rhyming, segmenting, and blending of sounds in spoken words, knowing and applying grade level phonics and word analysis skills in decoding words. So that includes knowing their consonant sounds, their long and short vowels, their high frequency words. And we're attacking that through our weekly data teams and common formative assessment administration. We have the STAR, Founders and Pinnell benchmarks. We also do monthly STAR checks on our students to make sure that they're progressing along the continuum. So we work in our teams to work on our center-based instruction and our direct instruction so that teachers are all on the same page and can share ideas. We have the SRBI and the progress monitoring for kids that are slightly below level and for kids who are even more below, so Tier 2 and Tier 3. And our focus is on getting that instruction not just so it's out of the classroom, but also embedded in the classroom. So that's our big focus for this year, is how we're breaking that down within the classroom. And we have continuing work with our units of study that include the science and social studies standards. And those are now completed. They've been worked on for a couple of years, bringing in the new generation science standards and the new social studies standards for Connecticut. And those are now complete, and they're just in the process of being refined and creating lesson plans. For numeracy, our next focus is the district focus continuing, constructing viable arguments and critiquing the reasoning of others. And the next movement for the classroom is to understand addition as putting together and adding to, and subtraction as taking apart or taking away from, and describing and pairing measurable attributes. So for the whole school, we're teaching discourse for the MP3 focus, using manipulative materials in small group. We're modeling thinking using manipulative materials to make thinking visible for children, and so that our observers can see what their thinking is as they're discussing and critiquing the reasoning of others. And we're focusing in kindergarten on teacher-led small groups, numeracy stations, addition, subtraction, more than, less than, and equal. So thank you.
Good evening. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of our strengths and also some of our focus areas. So I'm going to tell you some of them, there's more strengths that we have, as well as focus areas. There's more focus areas that we have too. It's a little snippet of Laurel School. So in kindergarten, strength areas, students can recognize the upper and lowercase letters, so we mix them up in order. We usually give them a time of a minute to be able to recognize those letters in that mixed up order. Also in literacy, our kindergarten students are able to have a book and be able to know how to hold the book the right way, where the first word is on the page, being able to read from left to right, top to bottom, and being able to turn the pages the correct way. In grade 1, strength areas, students can recognize the features of a sentence. They know that there has to be a capital letter at the beginning of the sentence, there's got to be a punctuation at the end of the sentence, and what is included into the sentences. Also in grade 1, they can ask and answer questions orally about key details of a fiction or nonfiction text. In grade 2, some of our strength areas, students know the text feature. So in a nonfiction text, they know what a caption is, they know what bold words are, and when we ask them to find facts of the story, they know, well, if it's a bold word, we need to, that's a word that might have a definition next to it, we could look at it in the glossary. Students also in grade 2 can ask and answer questions such as who, what, when, where, why, how, to demonstrate understanding of the key details in both a fiction and a nonfiction text. In math, kindergarten students, they can count from 200 by tens and ones, and students can write numbers from 0 to 20. Students can also add within 20, and demonstrate fluency for addition within 10. So fluency, very fluent adding like 8 plus 2, but they can also add, let's say, 14 plus 6 numbers also. Students, grade 1, can compare two-digit numbers based on the meaning of the tens and the ones digit. So they're looking at 12 being less than 15, 22 being greater than 20, so they're looking at the less than, greater than symbols. In grade 2, students can fluently add within 20 using strategies and know from memory all the sums of two one-digit numbers. So from memory, like 1 plus 5 equals 6, but they're also working on numbers such as 14 plus 6 is 20. And also in grade 2, students can understand that the three digits of a three-digit number represents the amounts hundreds, tens, and ones. So for example, in the number 783, we know that the 7 is the hundreds, the 8 is the tens, and the 3 is the ones digit. Our focus areas, kindergarten students, they're learning to read common high-frequency words by sight. So, for example, the, of, to. What our rule is, once the kids know 5 of our high-frequency words, we start putting them in a text right away. So they get familiar with the books, and we get them to be confident readers. Grade 1 students, they're learning to identify the reasons an author gives to support points in a text. So they're learning about author's point of view and why an author is writing this book or this text. Grade 2 students are learning to recount stories, including fables and folktales from diverse cultures, and they're learning about themes, the central message, the lesson, the moral of that story. Some of our strategies that we're using in literacy, all grades meet in data teams to monitor our students' progress. They review student assessments. They talk about strategies to help those kids who that really need specific strategies. The teachers are all retelling stories during their daily read-alouds. We do a thing where the teacher does a read-aloud, they model a strategy, and the kids are usually sitting in a group and they do what we call think, pair, share. So they're working together, they model the strategy, they work with a partner, and they share out what their thoughts are about whatever the strategy is that they're working on. Wondering, predicting a story, summaries of a story are some examples of some strategy we use. In grade 2, a strategy we use is the academic review. At the last Board of Ed meeting, we had one of our teachers, Mrs. Copa, talk about that, and that's one of our strategies we do where we meet with teachers to discuss the strategies that they use and to help teachers with whatever they need for the students. In numeracy, our kindergarten students are learning to fluently add and subtract within 5, so they're knowing that 1 plus 3 equals 4. Grade 1 students are learning to subtract within 20, demonstrating fluency for subtraction within 10, up to 10. So 8 minus 2 equals 6, that's an example. Grade 2 students are learning to solve word problems involving dollar bills, quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies, using the dollar sign and the cent sign appropriately. And some strategies that we're using in math. K1 students are using the instructional round process. We have colleagues visit each other's classrooms, and we discuss strategies that they could use to help them. All grade K2 students, they work in math centers to play math fact games with other students, and they take turns answering and checking each other's facts. And also, we provide students with practice solving money problems using our computers and our computer games and board games that they play with other students. So those are some examples. I'd like to introduce Jocelyn Poglich from Metacomet next.
Good evening. So Metacomet, so I've had, I think, a whole 4 days. So in my 4 days, I have worked together. We do have a lot of strengths, and I'll talk about the areas of focus too. So for grade 3 in literacy, our strengths are determining and clarifying the meanings of unknown words and phrases. Students are able to know and apply grade level phonics and word analysis skills and decoding words. In 4th grade, we noticed our students are very good at reading and comprehending informational text, including history, social studies, science, and technical text. And this is important in that the shift to more nonfiction text, our students are doing well and able to understand. And then our 4th grade students are also strong in determining or clarifying the meanings of words and phrases. In numeracy, for our 3rd graders, the students can apply properties of operations as strategies to multiply and divide. And students can also draw a scaled picture graph and a scaled bar graph to represent a data set with several categories. They can solve 1- and 2-step how many more and how many less problems using information presented in scaled bar graphs. And in 4th grade, our students can use place value understanding and properties of operations to perform multi-digit arithmetic. And they can use place value understanding to round multi-digit whole numbers to any place. Some identified focus areas. In literacy, we're still working on this as a continuation from an outcome from instructional rounds last year, but constructing viable arguments and critiquing the reasoning of others. Using text features such as captions, bold print, subheadings, glossaries, and the search tools to locate information relevant to a given topic, such as keywords, sidebars, hyperlinks, and then explain how an author uses reasons and evidence to support particular points in a text, so students have to be able to justify their answers to questions. And so the strategies for those areas, we are continuing bi-weekly data team meetings. The students have daily practice with close reading of informational and literary text and the use of text-dependent questions. Teachers create content-specific anchor charts, and there's daily DRP practice. And in numeracy, we are working on, again, similar to literacy, constructing those viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others. Students are also working on being able to fluently add and subtract within 1,000 using strategies and algorithms based on place value, properties of operations, or the relationships between addition and subtraction. And then drawing points, lines, line segments, rays, angles, which include right, acute, and obtuse, and perpendicular and parallel lines, and identifying these in 2-dimensional figures. And those, again, some of the strategies being utilized are those biweekly data team meetings, the use of word problems in which students have to analyze certain situations and extract important information, and then also the Go Math personal trainer. So next is my colleague, Sarah Williams, who's the principal of Carmen A. Reyes Intermediate School.
Good evening, board members. Good evening, Dr. Thompson, families, and our video audience, viewing audience. And I just want to say congratulations and welcome to Jocelyn to joining our team. It's really nice to have you here. And it's wonderful to be back from my maternity leave and joining into the, everything again. It just feels wonderful. It's nice to be back. So when we look at Carmen A. Reyes Intermediate School strength areas, you can see on the board, in fact, I'm so sorry. Yeah, thank you. In grade 5, this is something that we're really proud of. Grade 5 and 6 are continuing to quote accurately from a text. This is something that we've been growing and working on in the past couple of years. Drawing on information from multiple print and digital sources. So they get a topic like volcanoes and they have to read about it, watch a video on it, and listen to a radio clip and be able to extract information from all of those to be able to present their information in writing. Using combined knowledge of all letter, sound correspondences, syllabication patterns, and morphology to read accurately unfamiliar multisyllabic words in context and out of context. So this is that vocabulary piece. We've been really striving with the children how important it is to be able to figure out words that are unknown to you to help you understand information that is new. In grade 6, again, you can see there's that commonality between grade 5 and 6, so you can see the continuation of the work from our teachers. The citing textual evidence to support analysis of what the text explicitly says, as well as inferring and drawing conclusions from the text. We also have analyzing details of how an individual event or idea is introduced, illustrated, or elaborated in the text, and determining the meaning of words or phrases as they're used in the text, which again is that continuation of the vocabulary. Grade 5 numeracy. Our students are doing well with analyzing patterns and relationships, graphing points on the coordinate plane to solve real-world and mathematical problems, and representing and interpreting data. This is something that maybe, in fact, we have, Ms. Rendock was here a little earlier. She works with the children on looking at maybe a fantasy football team, and they get to look at all of the information, get really involved in it because it's interesting and exciting to them, and figure out how to graph all of that information. In grade 6, the students are doing well finding and position integers and other rational numbers on a horizontal or vertical number line diagram, finding and position pairs of integers and other rational numbers on a coordinate plane, and applying and extending previous understandings of numbers on the rational numbers line. Going to our focus areas, if you can take a look at that craft and structure. This is something that students are working on. They're analyzing multiple accounts of the same event or topic, noting the important similarities and differences and the point of view that they represent. So like I talked about that volcano scenario, this would be now that they're looking at different points of views from different authors and how they relate and why the author may have written the way they have. And range of text complexity. By the end of the year, read and comprehend literary and nonfiction in grades 6 through 8, and the text complexity band proficiently with scaffolding as needed at the high end of the range. So this is encouraging students to be able to read beyond where they are, pushing them past what the comfort is. So we're working to help them gain that. In order to do that, you can look at the strategies on the right-hand side. We use John Hattie's effect size for strategies. This is a very brilliant gentleman who has figured out the different strategies and what percent of effect they have. So you might, and I don't have one off the top of my head perfectly, but you might take something like a close reading strategy and saying that that is a really high effect size to help students understand what they're learning, which you can see as the next one. Our close reading strategy, our students are using highlighters to identify key idea and details, author's craft, so they know what they're specifically looking for while they are reading. It brings intentionality and purpose to their reading. We use the workshop model to increase the volume of reading and writing. This is something that has been very successful this year. The amount of writing our children are doing has increased exponentially, which also is showing that they're really understanding what they're reading. Use of benchmark assessments to plan instruction. We have the IABs, which come from Smarter Balanced. It's the interim assessment block, but I'm trying to, it's a shorter, smaller portion identifying a specific area that the students need to do well on. So it's another indicator for us based on Smarter Balanced. We also have the STAR assessment, as you heard before, which is our district assessment that we use for our benchmark. We are also doing academic reviews and learning and growth discussions where teachers identify by looking at the data per each individual student to see what we can do, what we've already been doing, and how to have a more successful student growth. And providing a variety of texts on the same topic, modeling the use of graphic organizers, and showing how to extrapolate the information for comparison. It's something we're working on. In numeracy, We have numbers and operations of fractions. We're working to solve problems involving addition and subtraction of fractions, referring to the same whole, including the case of unlike denominators. This is something they're working on. The unlike denominators is the change over from the earlier grades. Geometry, we're finding the area of right triangles, other triangles, special quadrilaterals, and polygons by composing into rectangles or decomposing into triangles, other shapes, applying these techniques in the context of solving real-world and mathematical problems. As Dr. Silver said earlier, these are some of the areas where they have not yet been explicitly taught. We're looking for greater growth as the year goes on when they have that instruction. You can see that in numeracy, we are doing a close reading of the word problems as well, so they're being able to pull out the important information. We have our biweekly data teams and monthly curriculum writing workshops. We are introducing those real-world concepts to tie in the understanding, like the fantasy football. Intervention groups are created through SRBI to address the Connecticut core targets in need of improvement, and we also are using our math workshop model. And I'd like to introduce Dr. Ellis from the middle school.
Good evening, James Thompson, members of the board. At this time, I would like to share some of our strengths and focus areas for Carmen Aries Middle School. Grade 7, strength areas include determining the meaning of words and phrases in a text or multiple texts, also determining central ideas and providing a summary, citing several pieces of textual evidence to support an analysis. As for our 8th grade, the strengths include determining central ideas and providing a summary as well. Again, the students are becoming a lot stronger in that in the following year. Also, notice that it's saying citing strong, thorough textual evidence to support analysis. That is very important because as students move on to the higher grades, they'll get into scenarios where they're debating and they're defending, and this is an area that is very important moving forward. Reading comprehension with various genres. We're talking about poems, we're talking about informational texts, and things of that matter. As for math or numeracy, grade 7, their strengths include applying operations with decimals, and I say that specifically because that is an area that our kids are doing very well because they like money. I do too. Another area, recognizing and representing proportional relationships between quantities. This is basically, this is twice the size of that, or this is 1/3 of that. The students are showing strength in that area. Understanding and evaluating basic probability. We probably are familiar with the spinner, where you have a spinner and one side of it might be 4, and then it might be cut into 1, 2, 3, and obviously the probability that it would hit 4 would be greater. 8th grade, the strengths include knowing and applying properties of exponents to generate equivalent numerical expressions. Just a quick way of showing rapid change over time. If you look up here on the boards here, this is an example of that, just so you know. Graphing proportional relationships, again, plotting coordinates and checking for the rate of change over time. And then also developing an equation to represent a line intercepting the vertical axis. Example, y equals mx plus b. As for the focus areas for literacy, they include debating using multiple sources. Again, it speaks to what we were talking about, what I was talking about a little bit earlier. Again, citing strong, thorough textual evidence to support an analysis, even though that's a strength, it's an area that we want to continue to focus on. Determining the author's point of view or purpose in a text. This is where we start drawing conclusions and making interpretations. As for the strategies that we will use to attack these areas, we're going to, again, you probably heard over this evening, using data teams to inform our instruction, utilizing close reading strategies, also increasing the use of informational text, more or less staying away from the nonfiction as much as possible. Using a rigorous questioning and tasks, and providing small group instruction. As for numeracy, the areas that we'll focus on will include using mathematical discourse and/or debate with real-world problems, solving linear equations, and understanding angles, segments, and lines. Ms. Williams discussed, we haven't covered geometry as of yet, so this is why there's a reason for us to focus on that going forward. For the numeracy strategies, we will conduct instructional rounds process. I think we might have spoke about that process a little bit, where we establish a problem of practice and we address it using strategies and peer observations and using that data to help inform our next moves. Providing extended learning opportunities using mathematical vocabulary across all disciplines, and spiraling instruction and assessments. And finally, increasing the opportunities to make real-world connections and applications. I'm happy to discuss the expansion of our STEM program. Dr. Thompson spoke about that a little earlier in the lower grades, but we've been doing it for a couple years now. We actually have a class where as non-TUG instructors come in and teach our students for a class, a period each day. And at this time, this concludes my presentation. And at this time, I would like to introduce Nicole Poplin from GEMS.
Thank you, Dr. Ellis. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Thompson, board members, and the viewing audience here and at home. GEMS 6th and 7th grade students' strengths in literacy are their ability to cite evidence from text to support analysis. In the 8th grade, students are adept at determining the theme or central idea of a text. For example, they are currently reading The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, and through thorough analysis, they uncover the central theme of friendship. In the 11th grade, their adeptness at the aforementioned skills become more refined in that they are able to cite strong and thorough text-based evidence from multiple sources to support their interpretation and are able to determine several themes and analyze the theme's development throughout the text. In numeracy, students are proficient in interpreting and applying the multiplication of fractions, proportional reasoning, and proportional relationships, lines, and linear equations. At the high school level, students exhibit skill in solving equations as a process of reasoning and representing and solving equations and inequalities graphically as well as mathematically. In the upcoming months, our focus areas in literacy will be to hone the skills of analyzing how sentences, chapters, stanzas, and scenes fit into the overall structure of a text, determine the structure an author uses to organize a text, to delineate and evaluate the argument and claims in a text, and determine the author's point of view and purpose in which rhetoric is effective. In regards to numeracy, the focus areas are interpreting and applying the division of fractions, solving problems with rational numbers, solving literal equations, and creating equations that describe numbers and relationships. Instructional strategies for both literacy and numeracy are as follows. The use of reading quadrants, close reading, CSI, which stands for Claim Support and Interpretation, not Crime Scene Investigation, Math Practice 1 and 3, which develop the skill of problem solving with perseverance and constructing viable arguments and critiquing the reasoning of others. In addition, we integrate the interim comprehensive assessments, interim assessment blocks, and released PSAT and SAT questions from College Board in daily lessons. We use an interdisciplinary focus where all of the aforementioned instructional strategies are embedded throughout all content areas with fidelity, targeted and intentional small group instruction with supplemental classes, performance tasks organically embedded in each unit and GEMS travel experience, and inquiry-based learning with high-level questioning. It is now my pleasure to introduce the principal of Bloomfield High School, Mr. Dan Maletti.
Thank you, Ms. Poplin. Members of the Board of Ed, Dr. Thompson, colleagues, thank you for having me. I will finish up the presentation with a reporting on Bloomfield High School's most recent administrative strength areas and areas of focus. In literacy, we saw an area of strength with our students, and students being able to interpret words and phrases in context. In other words, if they're reading about hurricanes, they're able to define what it means for trade winds within that context. Another one in literacy we saw is students being able to summarize or analyze, draw conclusions from a scientific informational text. In other words, how do objects get their light? They have to be able to analyze and explain through light and prisms and, through the use of prisms and light. So within numeracy, a couple of strengths we saw with our students, specifically in 11th grade, is they're able to solve linear equations and inequalities with one variable. For instance, negative 3x is greater than p plus 4, solve for x. Another strength area we saw is students are able to interpret what a slope of a line is or rate of change over time. For example, determine on the line to the left, what is the slope? Y equals 2x minus 12. Students sort of showed a nice strengths across the board with that. So numerous focus areas, ones that we're going to be going after with full force when it comes to literacy and numeracy. 80% of the PSAT and SAT is grounded in science and or social studies informational nonfiction texts. So therefore, a lot of our reading and content is based on primary U.S. documents, Declaration of Independence, Gettysburg Address, and instead of students memorizing like we used to do in social studies, they now have to analyze and interpret what is actually in the context to make meaning of it. In addition, we're looking for students in writing, speaking about writing earlier, a lot of writing, informative writing, and explanatory text. Again, interpreting and analyzing maybe some data or some context to support and defend their predictions or conclusions rather than just memorizing. How are we doing that? Things we've been working on over the past, 5, 6, 7 years, close reading strategies. Just looking at words in context, author's craft, explicit vocabulary instruction, close reading for rhetorical analysis, being able to break up a nonfiction piece. Sarah mentioned earlier John Hattie and his effect size, and the higher percentage means the greater growth of achievement in students. Selected response, what we used to call multiple choice, is now selected response and how to attack those type of questions. And then looking at the rigor of our questions and the question analysis and how to design these rigorous questions across all content areas. In numeracy, an area of focus is we're looking back at graphs, but this time with two variables. And graphing an equation that has both, that may have a 7x minus 18 equals y. So now they have to draw now with two variables and graph that type of line as opposed to one variable in the past. Another one is solving simple systems. Instead of having two lines that now crisscross, students are given a linear equation and a quadratic equation and have to determine what the line of intersection is. How are we doing that? Again, close reading can be done in numeracy as well. Make sense of a problem, pick out the important words, explicit vocabulary for numeracy. We're looking at problem solving and data analysis across all content areas, graphs, charts, tables. Again, going back to John Hattie's high effect strategies. And then finally, rigorous questioning, question design, and building our questions to have students have to transfer their learning from what they learned and what we scaffolded in the past. That for Bloomfield High School, our strength areas and focus areas. I thank you again for your time. I'd like to now introduce again Dr. Bethany Silva to close out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maletti and our principals. Every student, in summary, every student deserves a great teacher, not by chance, but by design. And this process that we use of anchoring our instruction in the data and monitoring our student progress with data and the standards to guide us is really a core part of our design process in serving our learners. So at this time, we are ready for questions from our board members.
Okay, you have been fed with a lot of material tonight, but are there any questions out there?
I did.
Go ahead.
The presentation was outstanding, and because you guys presented it in the way that you did from the elementary to the high school, my question is, as a parent of a student and a junior at the high school, is the continuity. And how is it that are the kids that aren't getting this? Because there's a lot of information that you shared here, and with, I'm just gonna digress a little bit. At the airport, I seen a 4-year-old being able to use a telephone, a cell phone, in order to get information. And to me, that was just outstanding, that that's the way these kids are thinking nowadays. They are technology driven. That's the way they do learn. And I'm just trying to figure out how is this all, that being incorporated into how we are teaching our children now.
So how is evolving technology being incorporated?
Yes.
That's a great question. I think at all the various levels, we have different ways that we're using technology, and I would just like to invite the principals to share some of the ways that they're doing that. Dr. Ellis?
Yes, speaking of the STEM programming that we implemented, I think about 3 years ago, we saw the same evolution that you're speaking of. The students are much more interested in technology than they are, listening to teachers. So with that being said, we basically brought in, and we felt that manufacturing skills is the direction that we're moving in, and as you learned about the president, he spoke about that. So we thought it was important that we exposed them to those real world applications. And some of the things they're doing now is programming. They're actually programming robots and programming software to control robots and get them to do things that they want them to do. So that's another way just to kind of pique the interest. But the math, the science, the language arts is all embedded in those activities. So that's what we're doing now. I think that we would like to continue to expand that because it's important that we continue to pique the interest of our students in order for them to learn and move forward. So that's just one way, and I think that how we expanded it at Carmen Aries Middle School is by creating a class. So every student is exposed to it. So you had said before how some students missing it. Well, that's not happening at Carmen. Every student is being exposed to those experiences right now.
Because that's very important that they do in some way, shape, or form, even if it's just on a daily task or every once a week, there's some kind of exposure and it's incorporated, because you don't want to lose them in mundane, because we're losing them in mundane if we're not getting on board with technology. Yes.
That's very important. Yeah.
And can I just add that through our extended learning opportunities in grades 2 through high school, we have our STEAM initiative where our students are engaged in science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And we've recently partnered with UConn, Edmonton,
St. Joe,
CCAT, Connecticut Center of Advanced Technology. So we are truly creating a STEM initiative here in our district, in addition to incorporating our new NGSS standards, the National Next Generation Science Standards, so which embeds the engineering design process throughout the curriculum. So we are definitely moving in that direction.
I'll speak for the elementaries and the K1, 2. We have Chromebooks in our school for the students to use. We have a computer lab too, in which they go to, as well as computers in the room. So they are using those computers daily. They're doing math and reading games on it, so they're reading and answering questions, but in a game kind of format. So they are using that. In our extended day, we have, just like Trevor said with coding, we have these little robots, they're called blue bots, and the kids program them and learn coding in that way. Little arrows on them, and you can get like 5 forward, 3 backwards, and the little robot will go. And teach them how to, navigate a maze with the little robot that they have. So those are things that will kids too.
And even at Wintonbury, we have Promethean boards in every room. And part of our scientific inquiry theme is for the students to be asking their own questions about topics. We practice it at the farm. We do a little preview video about what's coming, and students have to ask questions and then they investigate by going on the farm. Any questions that are unanswered are looked up on the Promethean board together, or books are read. We don't just only use, technology, but books are read, but the kids are doing research even at the preschool and kindergarten level in the school. So it's just sort of a universal incorporation of having
Because that's the way they're learning now. That's wonderful.
You have to engage
Wonderful.
them. This is what we are all always talking about, is the absolute high level of engagement that we can get from our kids. And we're supported by central office with that.
Appreciate that.
I just wanted to add one component to that with the Chromebook. The availability for the children to be able to edit each other through the Chromebook has been really helpful for that constructing viable arguments and critiquing the reasoning of others. It's given them their own voice to be able to talk with their peers and share their ideas with their writing. And the use of the Chromebook has been really helpful with that as well.
And there's one more thing, just to piggyback on what Ms. Williams said. There's a program called Power, where basically, as I'm writing, if I'm in a group with someone, we can all look at the same piece at the same time, but the teacher can look at the things that they're writing at the same time as well. So that was the most significant piece for me, especially for your editing and revising, because I'm a little stickler when it comes to that. Very, very, very important.
If I might add as well, too, we have to remember that our students have access to the most powerful processing systems in the world, and these iPhones that cost out $800. So we need to continue to utilize that as a tool as well, too, because they have access to this information, and it's a tool. It's not a cheating instrument, because you have to be able to use that information in an appropriate manner, and that's where our job comes into play. We have to teach our students how to use the internet judiciously and to look at it with cautionary eyes, because everything that is available in the world is on the internet now. We have to teach our students how to use that information and evaluate. So we do have access to all of that wonderful, technology in our classes, but we definitely are using it, and we are preparing our students for 21st century learning.
I want to say in closing that our principals have demonstrated through their presentations that they are true and effective instructional leaders. And they have a true command of the data, and they're using data strategically to inform decisions. So they've done a great job. And that's something, the reason why I had to underscore the instructional leadership, because this is a place where many districts strive to get their principals. And you saw tonight that they are true instructional leaders.
Absolutely.
Any other final questions? Okay.
Nice
I thank you very much. Item 9B, vote to approve the BEA contract. Mr. Johnson?
It's a tough group to follow. Nice job. Good evening, Chairman Harris, Dr. Thompson, board members, and our audience both here and at home. We've completed our statutory obligation under 10-151E to negotiate with the Bloomfield Education Association, that is our teachers, through the collective bargaining process. We met several times throughout the fall, early on without a state contract, by the way, making things really interesting. We, as usual, had excellent dialogue, and we've reached a tentative agreement with the Teachers Association through the mediation process. The tentative agreement is being brought this evening to the full board. The tentative contract, as is typical for Bloomfield, covers 3 years. This is going to sound scary. 2018-19, 19-20, 2020, 2021. We had a very productive discussion where we clarified contract language. That's the maintenance part of it. Along the way over the last 3 years, if there was language that was unclear, ambiguous, or created a lot of questions, we take that time to address the contract language. More importantly, we look at salary increases. Every child deserves a great teacher. We have to be competitive, but we also have to be sensitive to the taxpayers of Bloomfield. So we walk a fine line. It's a different world than it was 3 years ago. And it shows in the percentage increases that we've negotiated with the teachers. 3 years ago, we were talking about numbers anywhere from 2.5%, 3.5%. This year, we negotiated and was ratified by the teachers an increase in 2018-19 of 1.8% with no step increase. In other words, in a salary schedule for teachers, they move along a salary schedule based on experience, and that is what they call the increment, and that usually ups the salary account. In the second year of the contract, 1.7% with a mid-year step. So instead of teachers moving a full step, they will move a step at mid-year. So in essence, we're talking about a half step based on experience. And in the third year, 1.7, and again, no step increase. So they worked hard with us. They also, as we know, insurance is a pretty scary situation. They worked with us this year and upping their cost share to pay for the insurance. They agreed also to pay the difference if they opt to take the more premium preferred provider plan. Many of our teachers have moved to a high deductible plan, which is advantageous to the school district. And if they opt to be on the more traditional preferred provider plan, they've agreed to pay that difference out of pocket. The teachers will also contribute an additional 2% over the life of this contract for that particular insurance plan. A couple of things that we did for future contracts. No new hires will be eligible for severance benefits. So anybody that we hire from this point on will not be eligible for severance. In addition, no new hires will be eligible for longevity benefits. When a teacher reaches the top of the salary schedule, there is a longevity plan that kicks in that increases their salary slightly over the years. No new teachers hired will be eligible for that. So that'll help Bloomfield Public Schools in the future. If the board approves this contract, it will be filed with the town clerk's office. The town will have 30 days to act on that agreement. They do not approve it. However, they could vote to oppose it. And that would bring about some legislative requirements to bring this to an arbitrator. So I will be presenting the contract to the town, and it'll stay there for 30 days if they choose to act upon it. So at this point, we are looking for a board approval on this tentative agreement.
Can I have a motion, please? Mr. Walters.
Yes, I move to approve the tentative agreement between Bloomfield Board of Education and the Bloomfield Education Association for the period July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2022, as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Ike.
Everyone in the community is very sensitive to these negotiations, and many people want zeros. They want the teachers or whoever to pay more on the health insurance. So it appears, but if you look at the paper, 1% is probably what everybody's getting in the area. 2 and 3 is you no longer get if they're getting anything at all. Right. Was there any discussion on any hard zeros for 1 year?
I saw some coming in. We are one of the first out of the gate, so we negotiate earlier than most school districts. So we really didn't have a lot of information out there, but they are coming in now. I've seen some zeros in the first year, but they're followed up with numbers like 2.5% to 3% in the 2 remaining years. So overall, it's looking pretty, like we're pretty well in line with what other school districts are getting. And I think they've looked at Bloomfield being one of the early ones out of the gate in terms of what our agreement settlement looked like. So that was, that may have been part of it, because I believe some of the law firms do share tentative agreements with some of their districts. So they've looked at some of our numbers.
Mrs. Bolton?
Thank you for your information.
Sure.
With the additional 1% that teachers are having to pay into their teacher retirement, has there been discussion with the teachers union about how that impacts them, or were there questions about that for you?
Well, that's a great question, because at the time, there was a lot of discussion that it probably could have been even more difficult. In fact, early on, we were very reluctant to set a salary increase based on the fact that the burden on the town may have been to kick in the teacher retirement money. We have had discussions. This was known to the teachers when they ratified their contract. So I'm sure that they did their own number crunching and understand that there is that additional 1%, both for teachers and administrators.
Right. So it's a net gain.
Other questions? Other questions? Okay, hearing none, the motion to accept the BEA contract for the next 3 years as a tentative agreement. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Oppose? Abstentions? The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have 2 brief comments on CABE updates. The first one is that February 3rd to the 6th, I will be in Washington, D.C. at the National School Board Association's annual advocacy conference. Will end on the 6th at up on Capitol Hill, where we will be talking to all of our legislators from the state of Connecticut. And one of those topics are special ed costs and the fact that we have never achieved the percentage that was so promised to us years ago. So along with many other topics. But I want to remind board members that on February 15th, you have a flyer in your packet. Capital Region Education Council, CREC, Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, CABE, and HASA, the Hartford Area Superintendents Association, is holding their annual legislative breakfast at 8 a.m. on the 15th at the Capitol, at the state capitol. And that's so if you would like to attend, please contact Krista. It's called a legislative breakfast, but it's not quite like our legislative breakfast. So, I mean, just a few little pastries and coffee.
Adjust your expectations.
But you will get an opportunity to listen to some legislators talk about the upcoming legislative session. So, and that's it for me.
So do we RSVP to Krista or to the name listed?
To Krista, she'll do it. She'll take the rest of it.
All right.
All right, board comments. Mr. Ike?
Happy New Year. And the presentation was outstanding. It's come a long way. I can remember the days we were battling out, and yes, this is very outstanding. I almost need Sheldon for the Big Bang to interpretate this. This is heavy. It's heavy. Very good.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes, Happy New Year. Thank you all very much for the excellent presentation. And to the board members, I'd just like to, again, even though I have officially resigned my position as the vice president, of the PTO at the high school because of Michael Waters pushing me to do so. Just kidding, just kidding. But they have extended an invitation to the board members and superintendent and his cabinet to attend the PTO meeting, which is scheduled for next Tuesday at 6:30. It is a tradition that they have done so, invited them just for it's a community engagement, and as well as to let the parents at the high school know who are the powers that be that help our education system run so diligently. So I promised that I wouldn't mention it tonight, to the viewing audience, parents to come out and participate, and hope that you all will be able to attend. And I will be there. Thank you very much.
Mr. Fragman?
Staff, thank you. Excellent job tonight. I know you've been at respective schools since about 7 o'clock this morning.
Yes.
You're smiling. You know, that's what, almost 8:30. Time you get home will be 9:30. Probably haven't had dinner. So those that are watching at home, here's our principals still at work. I love that word engagement. Every time I talk to a family about children or even moving into school, I'm saying we're getting a great education, and here are some of the reasons we're receiving that information from you. A couple other things, with this cold weather, hopefully a lot of our young people have been keeping warm. And I noticed a couple coughs and sneezing, so hopefully we've also been warning our young people to make sure they wash their hands, use a little of the antiseptic or Purell at the schools, because we want to make sure flu stays away from us. And additionally, Happy New Year. Thank you.
Mrs. Bolton?
Happy New Year to everyone. This is my first day out of the house since the New Year started. I'm Ms. Eel, I think you mentioned you have bronchitis. I was down for the count. So one thing in our family this year, instead of making resolutions that we would break by the end of next week, we decided to choose a word for the year, and my word is gratitude. And I can certainly say tonight I am very grateful for being a part of this board, listening to the administrators, and it wasn't long ago that I was sitting there, but to hear your presentation and the commitment that you have to our children is just so refreshing, and I thank you so much. Thank you for your time and for all that you do. I would also like to, I'm happy to meet Ms. Williams. Congratulations on your son, okay, a baby, right? And last meeting, we congratulated and welcomed Ms. Puglish. And I would also like to say, in his absence, we want to thank Mr. Freeman Burr for the work that he did during that process, and also Jill Narain, who is, I understand, retired now and who worked in your place. So as we continue with our gratitude, I want to make sure that we're doing that. So thank you so much.
Mr. Walters?
Well, as usual, everybody said what I was planning to say, so I will just say it again. First of all, I'm just really happy to hear about the continuous wonderful things happening in Bloomfield. Particularly, I think the superintendent mentioned it, the extended learning opportunities. Anytime we can extend learning opportunities, I think that's a great thing for our students. I also was very pleased and impressed with the presentations from the educational leaders. It's always refreshing to hear what's happening in the individual schools, and I think you all did a wonderful job with those presentations. In addition to you all having a long day, I think Dr. Thompson's cabinet also has a long day, because they're sitting right behind you all, and they probably had very busy days as well. And I'm not going to be long this evening. The last thing I want to say, and I think Dr. Silva mentioned this, or she said this quote, "Every student deserves a great teacher, not by chance, but by design." And I think that's happening here in this district. We are designing wonderful learning opportunities for our learners. So we thank you all. That concludes my remarks.
And on my behalf, Happy New Year to each and every one of you. And I thank our leaders here for a wonderful presentation. As usual, you continue to amaze all of us with your energy and your hard work. I want to thank Mrs. Bolton for remembering Freeman Burr and Jill Narain for the service that they have provided for our school community. And I'll see you around. Can I get a motion?
Second.
We are adjourned.
Thank God. Great job.
Don't we vote?
No, no.
Oh, I guess it's slowly coming in. So,
Yeah.